Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be breaking down the LEC matchups that are coming up and the bracket that follows. I wanted also to highlight the championship points because all of these teams of course are competing to play in the season finals, which will of course be the world's qualification, which is the most important thing for most of these teams because winning the split seems so far away considering G2 is there. So, a little rundown on where we're at in terms of championship points. KC, first and foremost, they need to make top 3 in order to qualify. So basically, whoever makes top 3 in summer qualifies to the summer playoffs, and then slot number 5, 4, 6 is through, of course, championship points. If you are number 1 in the season, basically in summer, if you get number 1, you also qualify to the World Championship, just an additional detail. Basically, KC, top 3, no other way. You need to make top 3 in order to qualify to the season finals, which means that at a minimum, they need to win 1 best of 5 because they're going through the lower bracket, 1 BO5 playing against the team that wins the other side of the lower bracket. The other teams, GX, they can qualify through being 4th place, but that means that the results for them need to be perfect. SK need to lose, GX need to lose, Team Heretics needs to lose, and then they can qualify through 4th. Otherwise, they're in the same boat as, of course, KC, meaning they need to make top 3. If they are shared 4th with, for example, SK, it means then that they need to beat SK in order to make the season finals, SK being safe as a 4th place spot due to the points that they have. And then finally, the same thing for Team Heretics. If they make 4th, they qualify through points. And that's it. Mad Lions Koi also in, TBDS also in, and Fnatic in G2. They're already in the top 3 because they, of course, are already in the winner bracket playing their best of 5 against each other for whoever is going to be the final or the, in the final or in the semi-final leading up to it in the gauntlet that the lower bracket team needs to do. You guys know the format. Which brings us, of course, to the matchups. Where do we start? KC versus Mad Lions. In regards to where KC started, in terms of what they showed, I think against G2, I think they showed decent form. In terms of the preparation, I'm happy that KC, slammed Yone twice. I don't see Closer as the player to want to play the carry junglers in Brand and Zyra. This has been the big question mark for European teams, LEC teams. Why are they not playing Brand, Zyra, which are clearly very, very broken? And I think the biggest issue lies in the fact that I think these teams just don't want to play AD mid lanes. AD mid lanes require you to side lane super well, and this has been a very, very big weakness for most teams. But Vlad is a player that, he played the Yone, and I think in terms of KC's identity is very clear. G2, as I mentioned in the previous breakdown of KC, they banned Zeri Ezreal. Zeri Ezreal, champions that can be isolated on mid lane. Kai'Sa is the 3rd. I think for KC's identity, you want Upset to be playing either Ezreal, Zeri, Kai'Sa, because they can play in isolation, and it streamlines KC's mid game, where all they need to do is weak side, Kana, and then jungle and support just right click towards Vladi, place the vision, and then Upset is always playing something that can wave clear with static shiv, and also easily connect with Zeri, with Ezreal E, or of course Kai'Sa ultimate. And this is the pattern that they like to play. And I think in KC's position, it is good to streamline your process. I think that Vladi looked solid on the Yone. I think the main question is, like Vladi, Tristana, is he being held back by the fact that Closer doesn't want to play the carries? Because currently on the patch, it's like Koki, Tristana are very, very strong. But what makes them even stronger is the fact that AP carries are super strong. And that extends into top lane, that extends into everything else. And through that, you can easily, just dominate because you scale and you're strong throughout the whole game. The main question for me when it comes to KC is, how do they handle nerves? This G2 game was rather, chill in the sense that no one expected them to beat G2. They could play loose, they could try their best. There was no pressure, but now they're facing elimination. I think that this is something that KC didn't really get challenged on because against Mad Lions, they did in fact actually, they stole some victories in the regular split to actually qualify to the best of 3s. And they faced G2 in the first round, not expecting them to win, and I think they played some decent games. They showed improvement, but I'm still worried about KC's, management of pressure, because they are facing off against a team that I think thrives under pressure. Mad Lions is a team that has faced elimination many times already in this split, because they had to play, of course, tiebreakers, and they were very, very far down in the dumps. I think even Mad Lions could have beaten BDS, but I think that the element of not having the pressure of elimination kind of makes Mad Lions worse. In terms of the spiritual element of that, I do think that that is where the biggest difference lies. I think Mad Lions as a team manages pressures really, really well, and I think against KC, this is where they can take advantage. I wonder if KC, in the case of where they get Tristana, if they kind of maneuver around it by still playing Sejuani and still play, of course, maybe Maokai, Ivan. These are like kind of band-aid solutions if you don't want to play the AP carries, and then you can still play tanks top that do AP damage, like the Gragas or something, maybe the Cannon. That could be a nice band-aid solution to make Vladi thrive. I think the strategy of KC, in terms of where the matchups lie, I think Vladi versus Friskawi is the big one, and I do think Friskawi is the weakest player on, of course, Mad Lions. So KC maybe strategically could have some edge, but I do think, the main question for me is just how do they manage that pressure? Mad Lions on the other side, the way they lose games is just incredible. I think it's very good that Mad Lions took a step back and kind of rediscovered their identity. I think that the big part of what made Mad Lions good in the past was just how Alvaro and, of course, Mr. Elioya played together. I think that when they pick bad jungle support pairings like Braum, Talia, I think that this is where they are weaker. I think that Friskawi should be the one that facilitates and plays for the team. I think that's better for them, even though he did play a couple of Tristana games and had some moments. I think that Supwa is playing better than before. I do think that he had some good moments as well when he played, but just in terms of how Mad Lions overreached in that game against BDS, it's so weird, because usually if a team loses the way Mad Lions does, I give them a pass because they did the hard part against BDS. They got the soul, they had a 10k gold lead, and all they needed to do was clear the vision and hit Nash, and force the enemy to invite themselves into them. But they just fought in such a terrible choke. And usually I would give a pass to teams, but this has just been such a massive trend for Mad Lions that it becomes very worrisome. But I think there's something about Mad Lions when they play under pressure that they just play better. And that element alone, if they recognize Alvaro, Elioya, good mid-jungle duos, keep playing the AD mids just so Elioya can play the strong AP carries. He was the first one to play Zara jungle. Why not continue in that trend? And then just let Midwin pick late in, of course, the draft, and let him get a little bit creative. He seems to be playing a lot of Kesante, and he seems to be playing, he dropped the Camille, which was good. I like that Midwin rediscovers himself. So currently, I feel like KC really drew the worst matchups possible, because I feel like KC could potentially upset any of the other teams. But lower bracket, I think MDK and SK, they kind of come out of the first initial best of threes looking like the strongest teams to beat in my mind. So I think KC really drew the short straw, and I think that MDK, in terms of what their spirit is, I do think that they are favored in this matchup. But if KC want to find an entry point, I do think it's through Vladi, and maybe Mad Lions can't keep their composure with their leads and kind of throw it away. But I think that KC should really commit to the same identity of just right-clicking on Vladi when they can and leaving Upset in isolation. I think Upset is very good at making sure that he gets farm. I think he's very, very good playing the 1v1s in the 80 situations. I think this is something that is a massive strength of his too. And I think that KC, what they showed in the G2 series was that they have a form of identity. The main question would be, like, in terms of the bans that are prepared, the prio that we saw, of course, in the first initial series, the rel bans, the rumble removals make, of course, sense. I just don't know what we actually learned from the Mad Lions and G2 series in terms of ban prep, because I think a lot of it is fairly standard. And I don't think MDK revealed something vast due to BDS really holding on to their bans. They held on to Vi, Varos, Sejuani, right? One game they banned Twisted Fate, not sure why, but then they dropped it and just banned the Sejuani themselves. And now Elio has shown that he's willing to play other junglers, so I don't think there's a lot of takeaways from the initial series, so we will have to, of course, pay attention to that. But right now, I have to say I favor Mad Lions due to the clutch factor. I think that is the biggest detail, because the entire year has been a story of KC not being able to perform under pressure. So this will be the ultimate test, because I think if they can play up to par, I do think that KC can have a decent level, because I think Targamas is doing better. I think Vlade is finding himself, and I think Upset has found the meta that makes sense to him. So we shall see. That moves us to the next matchup, which is Team Heretics versus GX. I think the big thing that stands out to me is just Jankos' tweet. So Jankos tweeted, "It's a bad excuse, but meta really doesn't fit our team, so we don't deserve any top spots. We'll try next week however we can." Well, I'm not really sure which meta fits their team, but this seems like a doomsday tweet, you know? It's like, there's very little hope in this, and maybe it's just a language barrier type thing, but this is looking rough, you know? I think in terms of where the meta is, I understand. I think Zviru on AD mids is horrible. I think that the AP jungles then don't match well because you can't play the AD mids. And I think that the issue of Team Heretics is just plain and simple that I don't see what meta they function in. It's like, this is a team that needs to play like the old Overwatch comp of like having 3 tanks and 3 healers. You guys remember that comp? You know, that's the meta this team would thrive in. Just 3 tanks, 3 healers. Now it's difficult because if we look at their preparation, it's like the meta doesn't fit us. So SK in that draft in the game 1, they first picked Tristana, was followed by Leona Ivan. Leona Ivan was followed, and then Zeri Nar was picked, and they picked Varus. And then Varus was slammed into the mid lane. It wasn't something that they put against Zeri. Varus, you know, lethality Varus makes a lot more sense because you can keep safety, but attack speed Varus, there's no safety on mid. Every gank, every time anyone looks at you, you just kind of die, and you're always in danger. You also, in this game, like Zviru didn't play an offensive summoner. Varus is basically AD Cassiopeia. It might sound crazy, but it's basically AD Cassiopeia in the sense that you survive ganks by 1v2ing. You take an aggressive summoner, here in this case you could go exhaust or barrier, and then you just fight your way through and hope that Ivan backs you up and play on vision. Because Tristana can W you on any time, literally can spear you and jump after you, you're going to be in big trouble. The follow-up was Twisted Fate into Gnar. I think this was a spot where he wanted Camille, but they could have probably gone Camille on 3, because you want to have a pairing together with Leona Ivan that kind of makes sense. TF, Ivan, Leona have no DPS, no damage. There were many moments in this game where they just were massaging people, and Mercs kind of completely outscaled them. And then Smolder on 5. I'm not sure where the Smolder came from. I can't really put a Smolder on anything. I feel like his scaling is kind of unrewarding, and I think his early game is too underwhelming, and I think that Zeri is just a way stronger champ. Team Heretics, Jankos said the meta doesn't fit them, but they didn't even play meta, so I don't even know where they're at, you know? Was this their poor attempt at trying to, you know, mend it together, or where are we going with this, you know? I'm really not sure. I have very little faith in Team Heretics, honestly. I think that their best bet is to play some kind of Camille, Sejuani, Camille, Ivan, and just put Wunder on the carry champ, put something on mid lane that is a bit more supportive, and then maybe they can get it done. But in the second game too, they played like Xin Zhao jungle, that is also quite weak nowadays, and I'm not so sure, you know. I think against Eski specifically, they were competing for the same jungle pool, so they struggled. But Team Heretics had the same issues as before. In regards to their matchup against GX, I do think GX is favored. I think that Jackie's is a lot more comfortable in the meta. I think that Jackie's is playing the right champions. Juhan is competing for the same champion pool. So once again, we have this issue in LEC there, where junglers are just refusing to play the most broken champions on the patch. Especially in a GX's configuration, right? It's like GX's configuration is that they have a tank top player, and they have, you know, a mid laner that's willing to play ADs. Instead, you know, I guess to some degree, I do appreciate a team that recognize that they are bad, that just, you know, found this Amumu pick, which is very easy to execute. You know, Amumu is basically like Maokai's sad cousin that doesn't have friends, you know. That's okay. They try to innovate, but I think it's cool that this team you know, is just playing the AD mids. I think Jackie's look good. I think he could have gotten more support from his support and jungle in those games, but Jackie's is playing the right mid laners. So it's like you have Jackie's, Vladi, Caps, and maybe, you know, we can add a humanoid in that box of mid laners that are playing the right champs, which gives an opportunity for your jungler to play the right champs. But here we have Juhan just playing, you know, Vi, fucking Amumu. No prio on brand, they ban Zyra themselves, and I think that this is something that probably will change. I don't know, if you watch every LPL game, every LEC game, you know these champions are broken as fuck, and they have very few spots where they are weak. Another thing that is strange, right, is there's no Ashe prio in the LEC. Ashe is giga broken in my mind, but that's an extension of Zyra and Brand being in the picture. You know, there's just something very, very off. Leona prio is also very low in the LEC. I'm very, very confused about where the meta is at. GX against Fnatic, I think they could have won that series. I think that Noah had a fantastic series, but I think GX just threw the whole game. Game 2 when they picked Lucian Nami. That was disturbing because first, if you know GX as a team, you know that Lucian Nami is so counterintuitive who they are. They don't have any identity when it comes to bottom side, and Ignar as a player playing range supports doesn't make any sense. So they slam Lucian Nami on a patch where it's weaker after not wanting to play it at all. I think this was disturbingly bad. Terrible read on your own team and also on where you're at. I am harsh on this because I do think that it's very disappointing because there's an opportunity there. You have an opportunity there to do more, and they just kind of throw game 2 completely. I don't think it's a question of execution. I think it's just a question of you don't understand what your own team is. And that is saying, I can say that with full confidence, only watching the games that they played on stage. And this is a team that had, you know, full information of scrims. I think this game 2 against Fnatic was just complete delusion. Delusion. So I think GX, I think D'Antonio, I think that he showed his flaws in regards to like what he is as a player. I think that's where Team Heretics might have an opportunity because it was very clear that Mr. D'Antonio was not a good laner. He's blind picking Ornn. He played 3 games of Ornn, and it's not a champ that you really want to blind pick. I think that he was effective, but I think that he sacked himself too hard in the draft. People noticed that you should ban Rumble against him, but I think it seems like as a player, D'Antonio can get more value tank picks if they let him pick later in the draft, so I think that's the move. That's an adaptation that GX can do, because I think the only angle for Team Heretics to break them is through top side and Flacket playing something that scales. Maybe they play a Senna lane bottom, Zeri lane bottom, and then, you know, GX, you know, it will just be a mid top side game. I just think Jackie stands out to me as a very strong player, and I think he's going to be the difference maker here against Team Heretics. I do think GX is favored against Team Heretics, especially after that Doomsday tweet and in conjunction with how poorly Team Heretics played in the first game. But I think the players to watch is Wunder and Jackie's. Really Wunder. If Team Heretics win somehow, I think it has to be through Wunder. Like, I want to see like Sejuani Camille, Ivan Camille. Like, Camille is usually the champ to go to. Jax maybe, some Renekton gaming, just make it a topside heavy game, maybe TF in a good matchup with a better jungle, something like this, something in that regard. Maybe Jankos just decides to slam the brand, and maybe that's the angle. That could be cool too. I think just Zviru is a big crux here for them in terms of the flexibility they have in draft. I'm also hoping that Trimby shows a lot more. I think Trimby has been very poor here in Summer Split. I think that he could do more. I just feel like this Team Heretics roster is very, very poorly put together. I think this is just a big GMing disaster in my mind. Finally, we have G2 versus Fnatic. In terms of what they showed, I have to say G2, their game 1 draft against BDS that they had in round 2, that's so disturbing. Like, just Sejuani first pick, which is fine with Justana out, I don't mind that. But to not look for any Yone angle, I thought was disappointing. Maybe it's one of the few champions Caps doesn't want to play. They just slam Lucian, Caitlyn. Caps is very known to play Lucian, but I feel like Lucian Caitlyn already pushes you into an identity that's quite weak, and then followed by that they pick Aatrox. I don't know if G2 is being experimental, but I am really not sold on the Caitlyn. I hate the Caitlyn. There's too much of a power drop, and it's too hard to create significant enough advantages. Caitlyn between item 1 to 3 is so weak in those spots. She just kind of falls over, doesn't do enough DPS, and she's required to have so much momentum in the game to carry forward. Really hate the Caitlyn, don't like it at all. Additionally, from BDS's side, it's like they slammed Viego in that game 1 draft, sorry, and they know that Renata's coming through. It's like Caitlyn Renata is a very common combo, very well-known combo. They banned the Braum, they banned the Zyra, which could have gone support here. Sejuani could have also gone top right. I don't mind the Zyra ban, but to leave Renata open and then to follow that up with, of course, a Viego lock-in against Renata, I think it was terrible. The Dr. Mundo in 5, I'm not so sure into Aatrox. It's like Aatrox can itemize very easily against Dr. Mundo, and he has healing in his kit, so Aatrox can easily survive that. I'm not so sold in terms of after the changes for Aatrox. I feel like that should be a very decent matchup for Aatrox. But when I look at these drafts, I'm quite disappointed. Especially after the previous week where G2 actually ramped it up, G2 actually slammed the Tristana. Of course, Tristana's out, but as a follow-up, why no Yone? Why no Corki? Why not together with the Lucian play some more Brand, more Zyra? It's like, yeah, this is Yak's opportunity to show his foot forward. It's like when I think of Yak, I think of the guy who wants to play the AP carries. So I don't know where that disconnect happens. I don't know what I don't see. Why is LEC so different in terms of their priors? Because here you have a mid laner that is capable of playing it all. And you're first picking Sejuani, sure, it's a takeaway from BDS, but then maybe you should set up to go for the Yone. Maybe you have an angle, I feel like Sejuani was a takeaway, and then they pick Lucian and Caitlyn to slot in. And then I'm just not super excited by this type of drafting. In the game 2, we saw G2, actually cook. This time they went Tristana first pick, which I don't understand how it got through. They banned Kate, which is a strange adaptation from BDS after the first initial game. And then they go Maokai, Ashe to be really OP champion of the patch, also super good into the Zyra that BDS decided to show. They follow up with the Seraphine into the blind pick Alistar, which I think was really, really good. The Rel ban and the Leona ban in the 1-2 for BDS is very painful, because when you follow that up with Nautilus Blitzcrank ban, there's no melee engaged supports that, of course, Mr. Lavrov wants to play. There's no melee supports left, so they slammed Seraphine, Ashe, wonderful combo. And I think this game 2 here, it's a very good educational moment for, Jace is good against the enemy team, but Jace invites champions that are good against your whole team. So I think in this spot, I would have enjoyed a lot more just a Renekton to stabilize, because the answers into Renekton are very bad against blue side comp. Whether it's Gnar or Cannon, or let's say an Ornn, I think these champions don't matter as much for your blue side composition. So I think Renekton would have been better here, just a bruiser, a frontliner, because Jace invites the answers. And it also, I can see it, Jace is decent into Zyra and Corki, but I think that you just create a circumstance where you invite a strong Bullfight on 5 as an example, because the enemy needs to hard engage into you. Right? So I really dislike the Jace pick. Jace fits the theme, but he invites the counters. So if you pick Renekton here, stability, strong lane, your team and your comp already outskills. Don't put yourself at risk, because if they're trying to pick engage against Renekton, usually it will be just worse for them. But nevertheless, G2 I think is the top dog 100%. I think G2 is going to beat Fnatic, but I think this is a good time to talk about Fnatic still, because we want to pay attention to Fnatic's growth and progression. I think Fnatic in the second series looked a lot better than in the first. It seems like they are warming up. I think the biggest person we need to highlight is Noah. Noah is now the best performing player on this team. I feel like June has fallen off. I think he plays a lot worse. He's very imprecise. I think the same thing for Humanoid. The biggest strength of Fnatic of old in my mind was how well they 3v3'd around mid lane, but now it's quite imprecise, and I feel like Humanoid is making a lot of individual mistakes. Looking back at Fnatic and what they've played in the season so far, when they were playing Corki, they were sending it bot. When Humanoid finally played Corki, he got W'd into the turret and solo killed by Talia. His Tristana looked fine, but at least they are creating a circumstance where, oh, okay, you have now your jungler that can play, potential carry when Sejuani is out. They played the Zyra game, which looked good, and I think that, the best identity for Fnatic in my mind is, scaling mobile carry for Mr. Noah in the Kai'Sa or the Zeri or maybe even Ezreal. And then you have weak side, top lane for Oscarini, whether it's the Poppy, K'Sante, Ornn. I think this is where he's at his best, maybe even Rumble, but I think Rumble is a 5-ban for them. And then Yamato just play an AD champ with a dash, because he just has a target on his back and is one of the easiest mid lanes to kill. I think that the key thing for me, what is exciting about Fnatic, is that Noah has managed to perform under pressure. I think that's the big one, because I think in the last 4 games that they played, I know they played 5 in playoffs, but the last 4 games, I think that Noah stood out. I think the main question for Noah will be, how does he manage a game without Kai'Sa? Because those 4 games were with Kai'Sa. So if people recognized Noah playing Kai'Sa 4 in a row and him performing well, maybe there's an opportunity to, target that to kind of, trim the enemy's pool, because I think a lot of the teams that are facing up against Fnatic are wasting jungle bans on Vi and Ivern. Especially now when Fnatic showed Sejuani performances, Zyra performances. I think if you are playing against Fnatic, target the mid lane pool, target the AD pool to see how they evolve, because I think that's where their preparation weakness lies. But I think G2 is going to beat them, G2 qualifying to the finals, Fnatic being the second final boss, and we'll see more. Some final thoughts, I guess. We talked about BDS already. I think BDS could easily lose their side of the bracket. I think Mad Lions could also beat SK potentially, but probably not. I think SK should be favored against whoever wins KC and Mad. And then BDS, I could see a world of them losing against GX. But the main thing for me, BDS this weekend, I feel like Labrov without the Rel is not having as much presence. I feel like Adam has heavily underperformed too. And I think that impacts the whole identity of BDS, because I think if Labrov doesn't control the rhythm of BDS is very poor. They don't have the vision for the setups. They don't have the engages as well. And I think that Labrov is the glue that keeps together the entirety of BDS. So when he's underperforming and he's not playing the tank champs in a good matchup, I think that this team is very far away from what they usually are. So now people have spotted the Rel ban, and now the question is, what will be the evolution? I just would want to see more BDS Leona. Like, why are they not playing Leona? Just fucking pick Leona if you can't play Rel. Because now they've been very reliant on Rel. I think this Blitzcrank is cold too. But imagine a world where maybe they don't get maybe Mad Lions 5-pick support instead of 5-picking K'Sante. Maybe it's a lot worse for them. So we have to see how BDS evolve, because for me BDS has been the biggest disappointment so far. Those are some thoughts and rundowns in terms of series scores. I think that Mad Lions, KC, I think I think 2-1, 2-1, and then I just expect for G2 to 3-0 Fnatic, honestly. Maybe 3-1, maybe they get one in, but that's it for the predictions. I don't want to say more on the best of 3s that follow, even though it's the same weekend, but I gave you some slight thoughts on that so you can marinate on it, because we have so much more information after the first best of 3s. So I'll catch you guys on the Flippity Flop. Let me know if you guys have any questions below. I'll answer them. Just drop them in the comments. All the best, only love. If you sneeze during this video, bless you and bless your face. See you later.